Welcome back to On the Slab, the horror show that we bring you each and every single Friday night. With me once again, your host, Ian the Dynamo Kelly, and Carl King Woe. And tonight we talk about one man who had the most infamous quote of, "Listen to them, the children of the night. What beautiful music they make." Dracula.
Eloquently put, my friend.
Did you like that?
I did. It was lovely.
Yeah. Of course, let's get some business out of the way. Make sure that you if you're listening to our audio, if you're listening to our audio, you're listening to it on your favorite audio platform, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you may listen to your shows are available on every single audio platform. And of course, we are here on YouTube also. So make sure that you do hit the bell notification, like and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts and opinions on our show. Give us suggestions, whatever it may be. But now that that's out of the way, we are here today to talk about one of my favorite subjects, one of my favorite characters, one of my favorite entities, if you will.
I don't think there's one conversation goes by between you and me where this doesn't come up.
No.
No, so I can vouch for that.
So it's only apropos, isn't it, that we have a show with you and me where we talk about Vlad the Impaler himself, Dracula. An amazing thing to think about, actually. The character of Dracula, which is obviously come in many forms. Obviously, the first depiction of him was NOSFERATU, which we will start on. Because I know that's probably your favorite horror film of all time, or at least up in the top 3 anyway.
It's up there with American Werewolf and Texas, so they're the 3.
Yeah.
For me,
yeah. So I was thinking about this, and even one of my favorite films ever, Salem's Lot, vampire based, very much in the Nosferatu vein. That's how the vampire looked. But isn't it amazing that we've got 2 Irish guys talking about a character that was developed by
an Irish guy?
From literally 10 minutes down the road from where I am at the moment in Clontarf. Bram Stoker, my God, like, what a genius. I mean, took the character and based it on, of course, Vlad the Impaler in Transylvania. And let's spend a minute on Vlad the Impaler, because I'm sure everybody knows that the character was based on Vlad the Impaler at this stage. Most horror fans do, but what a guy. Vlad the Impaler used to drink the blood of his victims, obviously hence where the vampiric kind of sentiments came from, and used to have thousands upon thousands of his enemies impaled on large spikes on his hill. Stakes, on his hill.
Making a statement.
Just to deter his enemies. So much so that he would leave them there for months. So the stench and the smell, it's as barbaric as it is, it was genius.
Absolutely. Basic tactics, or cheap tactics that you don't have to pay for,
But actually drank their blood as well. So I wonder, was he into the old witchcraft and the old Satanism? More than likely, I would imagine.
I mean, let's be honest. There's many different stories and legends and myths that we all have heard about Vlad the Impaler. I've been in some, versions of him. He was like I suppose you could say a warrior for God, starting off, and then lost all his faith in God because of the way events transpired for him. So I love, and I'm gonna just jump ahead a bit there, but I love the interpretation of Dracula by Gary Oldman, which, as I said, we'll get into that later. No, I was just
well, look, you brought it up, so let's start with that, because
well, I'll tell you why I'm saying that, right?
Well, I think the reason I would say we should start with it because it is the depiction that is based on Bram Stoker's book, because it is called Bram Stoker's Dracula is the name of the movie as well. It was the first one that was actually called that.
Yeah.
1992, I believe. Am I right?
That's right. Yeah. What a film.
So go ahead.
Like you know yourself, there's different interpretations of Dracula, and
sure.
You're again. I'm not making assumptions here. I think your favorite version of Dracula, the character, will be the Christopher Lee, Bela Lugosi style, which is kind of suave and still terrifying. Don't get me wrong. I love the whole looking at it back from when he was a crusader or whatever it was that he started off, and looking at that aspect of it and how he became the way he did. That fascinates me, you know. And but like I mean, when you see the difference between, even as you were saying at the start there, NOSFERATU, you know, who is loosely based on Dracula, as you know. But I mean, what I like about what they did with that's look, they start making that a type of vampire, a NOSFERATU, you know, that look, the ball, like Kurt Barlow, the ball, the teeth here, the two front.
Kurt Barlow, yeah.
100%. So that would be my favorite type of vampire, but not my favorite interpretation of Dracula.
No, that makes a lot of sense to me, because obviously with the two teeth pointed at the front, and the reason that they kind of done that was because it made sense, because in movies you would just see the bite marks on the victims, and they would always be very, very close together, and you were like, well, if the canines are the ones that are doing the damage, then there would be a wider gap. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Now, so you bring it back to what we were talking about, because I did jump the
gun. Well, no, I'm gonna spend a bit of time on the Gary Oldman one too, because I think it is a great adaptation of the book, because obviously when you go in, it's the same with the BBC series, the 3-part series. I mean, it got good until the final episode.
I liked the second. I really loved the second episode, and I wasn't over. The first one was fine. Didn't like the third one.
Second episode was fantastic, and I think the guy that portrayed Dracula was pretty good. Done a
decent he was.
Job. It's not easy to, it's not easy to do. The whole idea that he adapts to his environment, and he can put on the English accent and learn all the traits of the English people, just so that he can go over and buy property over in the UK and then start spreading his demonic seed.
But you know what? That's a great bow to the quiver of the character, because when you look at older films, then like the Christopher Lee ones and the Bela Lugosi's, now you know that he can change his voice and that kind of stuff to suit where he is.
100%. And I think Gary Oldman done it so well that, like, when you see him first, he's a frail, kind of empty vessel, basically, bloodless, lifeless. And he starts feeding on Harker and feeding on these victims, and he starts getting his youth again, because he's drinking from the fountain of youth. And then he turns into Gary Oldman, with the long hair and the little John Lennon glasses and stuff like that. And he's so suave, as you say. He becomes suave, kind of like, like you mentioned. The other two boys are, which we will get to. There's a great context in it. I thought, what's her name in the movie? Oh my God, I'm gonna kill her.
Mina?
Winona Ryder.
Oh, Winona Ryder, yeah.
She's just absolutely beautiful in the movie. If she really is, and I mean, not just beautiful in terms of looks, but how she plays the character as well. And
because she can be a bit pouty in films, but she
can be, but I think she's I think she's a very underrated actor as well.
Yeah, I agree.
She can be pouty 100% depending on the role. So I think that adaptation was absolutely fantastic. We go back to, we said the first adaptation was NOSFERATU, but it wasn't, it was the first one based on Dracula, but it wasn't Dracula. So the first actual Dracula was, of course, Bela Lugosi. My man.
Your man.
My man. And like I said, I've done that whole thing, at the start when he's, those black and white movies just do things to me. I don't know what it is. They're just so beautiful.
When you see that clip, and you know the way it's dead silent, and he says
when they're in the crypt,
yeah, and it's dead silent, and you can hear the crackling from the old film. That's
it's
just
amazing.
Gives you shivers, like, you know?
It really does. Like, and then when you see him, and he goes, "Listen to them, what the cheap creatures of the night, the children of the night,
children of the night."
What beautiful music they make. I mean, I dare say Bela Lugosi to that point. I mean, that still is actually quite a terrifying movie. I implore anybody to go back and watch it again, and actually just watch it. I always say this: keep the phones out of the hand. Watch it, because even his little slave is terrifying in it. You know what I mean? And you can tell that he's terrified by his master.
Yeah.
Master. It sounds like Gollum. That's obviously where they got Gollum from. But what I really love about Bela Lugosi's, it's his facials, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
the eyes, my Jesus. Piercing eyes.
Wow. And I mean, like, a quick side note, Bela Lugosi has been a phenomenal actor anyway. I mean, one of the most underappreciated actors in Hollywood history, I dare say. How they treated that man is pretty abysmal, to be fair. At one point, he was on £500 a week on one of the lots, while the likes of Boris Karloff are getting the thousands, you know. So there was a little bit of, I don't know, prejudice there. Yeah, a bit of prejudice there, because he was Hungarian, and they basically typecast him into that particular role. But what's great about Bela Lugosi was that he was actually buried in his
Dracula costume.
Oh, I mean, I just think that's so, you know,
that's class, isn't it?
So cool, man. What do you think of the? Let's talk about that first movie then, because it is very important. That first universal depiction of Dracula, with Bela Lugosi.
Again, as you know, I like the old films. I really love old films. Not every single one, of course, but this is a classic.
No.
And like I said, when I would have only seen this in terms of vampire films when I was younger. We'll say there was nothing else really I would have seen or been able to watch. And of course, like, it's, you know, we would have been looking at it for the first time years ago, and look at this, genuinely scary. You know, and even his movements and the slow movements, and it's just like, the feeling of dread, you can't escape it, like, you know. And all those old films for me are special because, and I think I've said this on multiple episodes, atmosphere. Like, they had to rely on,
that's our thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
atmosphere.
They had to rely on facial delivery. They had to rely on, not because there was no CGI at the time, you know. They had to rely on special effects, practical effects, and they were all innovators. And that's why, especially with Bela Lugosi, no one, I mean, well, okay, there's only one other guy who could probably match him,
which we'll go on to.
But that was a totally different beast, you know. So what a piece of cinematic history, you know. Really enjoyable.
Even the subtle little things that Bela Lugosi does, where he puts the hand over here, like, while he's holding the cape, you know what I mean, and he's like that with the one arm, you know what I mean, and he's kind of got that you know, that shout out to Phil Anselmo. That's definitely where he got that face from.
Absolutely.
And you know it, Phil. I mean, it's absolutely fantastical, in terms of just so beautifully written. You know, the script, the story, it's very much so based on the book. But they condense it. You know what I mean? Let's get on to the next big version of Dracula, the adaptation. They get a guy who's a lot bigger Not a bigger actor, but like a bigger man. 6'3" Christopher Lee. It rhymes.
Ha! 6'3" Christopher Lee.
6'3" Christopher Lee. Yeah, coming straight out Bray Studios, right here in Hammersmith in Hammer. So Christopher Lee obviously does the 1958 adaptation of Dracula, and it's called The Horror of Dracula. Of course, this is after The Curse of Frankenstein, where he does Frankenstein in a completely different way, because
which was great as well.
Oh, we will talk about that as well. We will talk about Frankenstein. That is fantastic, actually, his variation of wow. But Christopher Lee, a former war veteran, believe he was pilot cavalry as well. So he was a proper man.
Legit, yeah.
Oh, legit. Metalhead too. Had many metal albums singing opera, which is really cool. Isn't it really cool?
It is.
You know, Christopher Lee, for me, he's always going to be one of my favorite actors. And in this movie, another one of my favorite actors, who was probably one of the most underrated actors of all time. You know, the way I look at it is, this movie, for me, The Horror of Dracula, the sets that, I mean, it's one of the first color versions. It's one of the first few color versions that that Hammer did. They start bringing color into it.
And it's where we start. It's where
Technicolor.
Technicolor.
Yeah.
That's where we start romanticizing Dracula then.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the great moments in this movie is that you see the tale. They just always have a little prologue at the start. You know, this is such and such, blah blah blah. And it's meant to be in the 1800s, and they always stick to that 1800s type of
scenario.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like even the castle. As soon as Harker walks in, like he's looking for Dracula, and there he is, just at the top of the stairs.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's like, "I am Dracula," you know? And that's the only time you hear him speak. That's it. He walks down, big, huge 6'3" frame, walking down.
I love the way he has. Doesn't he have bits of red in his eyes as well?
Later in the movie.
Oh man.
God. Oh my God. I mean, what? He was definitely a more intimidating Dracula, wasn't he?
Yeah. Oh boy, absolutely a long shot. And that's not taking that away from Bela though.
No,
Bela was a different intimidating presence, I think. But Christopher Lee, Jesus, you know, like you'd look at Bela Lugosi and say, he's a little 5 foot whatever. But you'd look at Christopher Lee and you'd be like, he's like, what the fuck, like, you know?
Yeah, and of course, look, the man that I mentioned being one of the most underrated actors of all time, Mr. Peter Cushing. Like he's Van Helsing in it, you know, Abraham Van Helsing. How good is he in this movie? I mean, even the fight sequences that they do, like these two boys. I think Peter Cushing is like, because I don't think Christopher Lee is an underrated actor. I think he went on to have a pretty good career. Like he was obviously in Star Trek and Lord of the Rings. And, you know, he was in some pretty big movies. But Peter Cushing was just so eloquent, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He gave you a sense. He's the character in this that gives you a sense of calm and a sense of security, that everything's going to be all right. We might get this beast, you know?
I love one of his. I know it's one of his. Obviously in Star Wars, when he goes, "You may fire when ready." I love that.
Yes, when you fire when ready.
Perfect gentleman.
He's just absolutely fantastic, Peter Cushing. You know, those two were the yin to the yang, weren't they? I mean, they were in so many movies together, and I'm sure we'll do an episode on Hammer and talk about the importance of Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. But those two guys together, I mean, they were the best of friends. they had the height of respect for each other. And then, you know, even you see in the later years, Vincent Price would start coming into the mix with the two of them as well.
That's right, yeah.
Basil Rathbone and all these guys, like Basil Rathbone, the greatest Sherlock Holmes of all time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, he is.
We do segue on this show, but
we're allowed because it's all good.
But I mean, they would be the two standout Dracula movies, and then, you know, you're talking what, 1958, and of course there was a couple of other Dracula films after that. Then
but
obviously with, you know, Dracula Rises and
I know, and they were good. Like, so what was that one? Dracula Untold. Now I know it's later on with Luke Evans. I actually enjoyed that one.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, but I think the next pivotal one was 100% the 1992.
Oh yeah,
Gary Oldman.
Yeah, absolutely. Movie. I mean, when like the only ones I recognize as Dracula are the ones we've mentioned. You know, anything else is a vampire film. You know.
Yeah.
Just my opinion. That's all. You know, like, and especially the way that they portray Dracula in the Hammer films and Universal. That's how I see Dracula, the Dracula.
Yeah.
You know?
The Count.
Yeah. As much as I enjoy, as I said, the Gary Oldman interpretation of it, the Dracula I know and love and I identify with is Bela and Christopher Lee. You know?
Yeah, and it's so hard to pick one. I mean, my personal favorite would be Christopher Lee, but like, I've gone back and watched the Bela Lugosi one so many times now that I'm like, Jesus, I hate even saying that, you know, because it's like you can flip a coin on any given day.
Yeah,
and I'd probably be, but they're so different, and that's the great thing about the character, isn't it, of Dracula? Because that's what we're talking about. The adaptation and the kind of I suppose the
delivery.
I mean, it's one thing having a plot and a character, and you're meant to be this bad guy. You're meant to be this, you know, this evil entity. But it really boils down to the individual and how they see the interpretation.
Yeah.
And how they interpret, should I say? That would be the better English.
A character I would liken it to would be Joker in movies.
Yeah.
How the actor interprets the character, you know?
How does he see what aspects of his own inner dark self can he take that will apply to the character and make it, you know, either dark or comedic or, you know, whatever. I mean, that's acting 101, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think for a character like Dracula, I mean, we're probably talking about, along with Frankenstein, we're probably talking about the two biggest monsters / heels, or, you know, of all time.
Absolutely, and they'll never go. If they've lasted this long, they're gonna last twice as long now.
100%. I mean, we saw with Universal. I mean, with Universal Monsters now, we see, you know, we see the merchandise that they're making of all this old stuff. Like, it's literally never died.
Never.
You know,
it's all pop. It's all pop culture now. When you think about it, you know. Sorry for cutting it again.
No. Whereas, unfortunately, we've seen Hammer kind of not getting marketed as much as probably should have been. It's kind of the forgotten company, and it's only when people realize. I mean, the great thing about it is, like, those old Hammer movies, that old English hello, gentlemen, like, you know, it was great dialogue, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was something very comforting about it. You know, it was all well and good having and even, don't forget, like, most of these Universal movies, like, they would have English actors in it, or they would have Americans portraying English actors, and there was always that hello, how do you do?
Bad guys in American films were always British or Russian.
Yeah. And of course, obviously, Bela Lugosi was Hungarian, so like that kind of stood against him, you know, in Hollywood, because rather than Hollywood looking at him as an absolutely exceptional actor, they were like, "Oh, well, this guy is an American." But
he's just immigrant.
Different times. Look, different times, I suppose. But I mean, Bela Lugosi went on to have an amazing career in horror. I mean, he was in The Wolfman for a minute, and of course, he's the gypsy in The Wolfman. I know you're a big fan of The Wolfman, as am I. White Zombie. Good Lord.
That's right. What a film.
Good Lord, what a movie. And there was something about those eyes, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Then you've got Christopher Lee then, who goes on and does, a million movies with Peter Cushing, The Wicker Man, of course, the Horror Hotel.
Yeah.
Just so many. The Gorgon, he's obviously Frankenstein as well.
Yeah.
Blood from Satan's Claw.
That's right.
Just
also The Devil Rides Out. That's a great film.
The Devil Rides Out. What a movie!
He's cool in that because he's actually a good guy in that one.
That was late '60s. Yeah, like he was actually a good guy in many movies. He was a good guy in The Hound of the Baskerville as well.
Yeah.
So and like again, just that great deep voice. He had such a. I remember listening to one of the ladies that worked on one of the Dracula. I think it was Dracula Rises. I can't remember the name of the fucking movie. Anyway, she basically said like she was really good friends with Christopher Lee, and she said when he put that cape on, and once like he would actually hypnotize her.
I'd imagine so.
During scenes. Because it was like, wow, this guy is just so fucking believable.
Hello. Here's my neck.
Yeah, like, go on. Good looking kid as well, I suppose. Especially back then,
Oh, yeah.
Fine hairline, 6'3", war veteran.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? But I suppose when we talk about the broader sense of Dracula rather than talking about actors now, because that's what we're here to talk about. You've read the book, obviously. How important is that character to horror, and do you think horror would be where it is today without that character in it?
Okay, the character is very, very, very pivotal, very important to the whole genre of film in general, but we're talking about horror obviously now. Before we'll just talk about the Bela Lugosi one, as in before that you had the Nosferatu version, but you also had a couple of, you had a good few horror films before that version, and I think if that version of Dracula that we're talking about didn't happen, I do think horror movies would be very different, for the better or worse. I can't say, but I do think that it was a revolutionary style of horror film, the way that they portrayed Dracula then,
But the question I'm asking is, without the character, without that book being written.
Oh, it'd be totally different, yeah, absolutely.
Without that book being written, we're talking.
Because like no one really thinks of bringing vampires into modern literature or whatever until Bram Stoker, really. I may be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. But
Please do,
that's the starting point for Dracula in horror, really. So without the character, you wouldn't have half as much as what we all know and love today.
Yeah, I was thinking that it's the same with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, obviously.
Absolutely.
The two of them are so pivotal.
You're gonna hate me, but I actually prefer the Frankenstein book to the Dracula book. Just personal choice,
That's okay.
But I'm wrong, am I?
No, I love that book too. It's hard for me to pick between them. I mean, I'm always going to pick Dracula, but like the Frankenstein book is so human. Actually, I think both books are so human.
Yeah,
because you've got two completely different characters, but essentially looking for the same thing.
Yeah,
like Dracula wants love and wants to feel human again, whereas Frankenstein has been taken and made into a human and doesn't know what he feels.
Doesn't know what to do exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he's basically like a dog, who just, I suppose, wants to be loved and wants to fit in.
Yeah.
So they're both actually sad stories.
There's always a tinge of sadness, isn't it, in those films?
Well, that's why these guys were great writers and girls, obviously. Mary Shelley and Bram Stoker basically hit the nail on the head. They're love stories, but just in a completely different way. I mean, they're Shakespeare in a completely kind of occultish, dark kind of way,
Yeah.
But it's the same premise. You're always going to have a love interest. You're always going to have an antagonist. You're always going to have, the hero. So, I mean, it's classic literature. It's classic writing. And, there's a reason that these two books are probably the two of the biggest selling books of all time.
Yeah.
Because, of that. Just a quick mention. Bram Stoker does have a living relative who actually lives in Montreal, and his name is Dacre Stoker.
Dacre.
And he has a book called Dracula, and they're actually based on the notes of his uncle, Bram Stoker, and he wrote a book based on these notes, and it was kind of it's a really interesting book. Actually, I'd recommend people go out and check it out. It's kind of like Bram himself in his, he's in like a hotel room or something, and this is where he got the idea of writing about Dracula because it really happened.
Oh, right.
So it's a really, I won't give anything else away.
I've never read that. I'd have to check it out, actually.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy with that. I mean, I suppose we could look at other adaptations. I know yourself and Greg talked about vampires before, and and the importance of vampires in movies, especially back in the day. For me personally, I always like to keep atmosphere, but I always like to think of what scared me as a kid and keep that close to me.
Yeah.
So that I can suspend belief when I'm watching a movie. You know what I mean? And get that little bit of fright. When I think of the 80s movie Fright Night, and I mean that's very based on Dracula as well. I mean, Peter Vincent is obviously Peter Cushing, Van Helsing, but just a scaredy cat version.
Yeah.
Again, Salem's Lot. Unbelievable TV series. To call it a movie, it wasn't actually originally a movie. It was a 4-parter, but put into a movie when you condense it all, put it all together. Like, what's some of your, just for people that haven't heard, like, what's some of your favorite vampires?
Movies
and vampire movies, yeah.
Okay. Well, Nosferatu, obviously. And I do like, in terms of forgetting about the two main boys we talked about there, because we probably like the same films anyway. But I love as a vampire interpretation, I love 30 Days of Night. And that's the way. Yeah, I and so I like all types of vampires, but I like that kind of disgusting, filthy type vampire that they're just they're not romanticized. They're just disgusting. That's what I like in a vampire, So it's almost like Nosferatu and Kurt Barlow. They're not looking gorgeous, or they're not suave. They're just after something, So
yeah, no, I do. I like both. And I do like my vampires to be a bit, suave, and I think Interview with the Vampire is one of the best movies.
It's a great film
of all time. Regardless of what people say, Tom Cruise stole the show.
Oh, he did.
That's a fact.
The stat absolutely
is, without a doubt. And Brad Pitt's great in it, you know, but Lestat is the guy that you actually get behind more and more, isn't he?
Yeah.
When you watch it, when you get older, when you watch it for the first time, that came out in 1994. I remember it came out in '94, and I wasn't supposed to see it, but I had a kind of cool cousin that brought me up to his room and let me watch it. So,
and of course, wasn't that based on a book by Anne Rice?
Was indeed, yeah. There's actually a couple of them.
A couple of books in the series.
There was meant to be a follow-up movie to that.
That would have been great, actually.
That never happened. It would and it wouldn't, because obviously there was a reason they didn't make it, and I'm kind of glad they didn't make it for that reason. Because it's like, how you know what I mean? They're gonna ruin it. They're gonna ruin it if they fucking force it. But like, there's room for many different types of vampires, except for something like Twilight or any of that nonsense.
They're not vampires. They're sparkle bunnies.
No, they're literally strobe lights. You know, they're not anything.
No.
But I think in terms of, you know, it's the same with all Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They all marketed it. They all brought this shite in. Another quick one that I would like to bring in, for anybody out there that hasn't seen it, and all series are actually available on YouTube. Dark Shadows. That is something that people will probably be thinking of Johnny Depp, and you would be correct in doing so. They did make a movie. Johnny Depp is the vampire in it, and he comes back and he's kind of like, oh, he's from the Collins family. And he's very funny in it as well, actually. It's a very, very good movie. But that was based on a TV series back in the 50s/60s. You probably are aware of it.
I'm aware of it, but I've never actually seen it, would you believe?
Well, I would recommend people go and check it out. You type in Dark Shadows. They are all available on YouTube, every single episode, and they are absolutely beautiful. They're black and white until a point, I think, till it gets to 1963 when color starts coming in just predominantly. They're absolutely fantastic shows. They're only about 20 minutes long. Very, very much in the vein of, you know, Alfred Hitchcock Presents type shows.
Oh yeah, is his name Barnaby or Barnabas or something like that?
Barnabas Collins, yeah, fucking absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna watch them now when
I think I will as well.
No, you should. I swear to God, they're absolutely fantastic, and the acting in those days was so good. And as I said, like the sets that they had, they made do with what they had. They looked perfect. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And again, it's all atmosphere. Yeah, that's our thing. You know what I mean? That's been our thing from the start.
Yeah, our mantra from day one. It's gotta have atmosphere.
Yeah, and if you don't,
leave the hall.
Yeah. So I suppose that kind of about wraps it up for Dracula tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice to reminisce on old films, and you know, like, because I know the character has a really good place in your heart. So it's nice to be able to chat with you about it.
Yeah, 100%. I've always wanted to be Dracula. I just haven't found a way to do it yet. No, I'm kidding. But you know, 100%. As I said, we love doing these shows, and obviously, you know, when you look at your background there and my background here while I'm in the crypt, that's not a light, that's cement. They don't let me see the light. In fairness, they've locked me in. So why don't you tell our listeners where they can find us and what's changed to when they last listened to us?
Absolutely. So we're now on our own YouTube channel, obviously called On the Slab Horror Show, and we're also on, now we're going to be on, when you hear this, it will be audio as well, because we've decided to go on to the audio side of things as well. So you've got Anchor, you've got Spotify, you've got Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you can get podcasts, you're going to hear our show. And all the previous episodes will be uploaded onto the audio versions as well. So you'll have everything to listen back on. And again, it's just us having a chat about films that we like. That's all it is. We're not saying we're experts in any fields or anything like that. We're just having a bit of fun chatting about what we like, and what we like is horror movies.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I suppose until next week, that leaves me only one more thing to say.
Go for it.
This has been on the slab. I have been your host, Ian the Dynamo Kelly. I have been joined by the mighty Carl King Woe. And you, ladies and gentlemen, need to do me and him one solid. And all that is stay scared. Until next week, see you next Friday.